here's what I'm doing. I'm trying to allow the hope and happiness of Zohran Mamdani, who's been on this show before, to buoy me, even though I know a lot of could be waiting in the wings when it comes to this New York election. But I just want to ask you, give us a sense from New York about the excitement around Zoran, the volunteers, the early voting, the young people. Why does this feel possible?
When Zoran started in this race, he was polling around 5%, maybe even lower. And definitely in newsrooms across the country, when folks were like, we have to pay attention to this man and to this race and what this could mean for the country, I know a lot of people were shut down because this is a 33-year-old assemblyman who, in all honesty, has passed only a few bills, but for anyone involved in organizing in New York City, they know how big of a deal Mr. Mamdani is. And we've seen that in his campaign. As of yesterday, he's knocked 1.5 million doors across the city. And he's done that with the help of 50,000 volunteers. So that number of volunteers wouldn't fit in Madison Square Garden, right? So tonight, that they're having events all over the city, election watch parties, celebrate the Zomentum.
50,000 for a Democratic primary. And then I know you were saying also that 40% of early voters are under 40. So a huge surge in young voters who often, number one, they always get blamed for not being enthused. But, and we don't know how they all voted. But I think we can assume that some of this early young voting is thanks to the energy that Zoran has brought with him. And, some of his plans that are out there, I mean, when he was on the show, right, he was talking about not just free buses, rent freezes, but also really innovative, interesting ideas that, I think probably get him the socialist label, which maybe is the free buses thing, but also community run grocery stores that are funded by the city so that people can have affordable food that's accessible to them. All of these really forward thinking ideas, in addition to public safety units, right? Rather than adding more cops to the streets, Cuomo wants to do, of course, Eric Adams did. What if we had people specifically to address, things like mental health crises, whatever it was, so that you don't have more situations where cops are beating people up or possibly killing them. Just talk about what do you think some of the most captivating pieces of him, other than himself. He himself is insanely captivating. He's got this contagious smile. He always seems happy. He's insanely gracious. Anyway, you take it from there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that if someone isn't ranking Zoran, it's possible that they don't know who he is, and that is a big part of this race. Name recognition is obviously going to play a big role. But for those who do, I think, as you were saying, the affordability platform that he's running on is something that a lot of New Yorkers can tap into. So, this morning I was in Southeast Queens by one of the largest affordable housing complexes in the city, and they're facing a 22% rent hike next year.
Jesus.
And so those are obviously people who, if they are made aware of his platform to freeze the rent on rent stabilized tenants, if those volunteers were able to get out to there, that's obviously someone who,
if they're not ranking him, they maybe haven't heard that message.
Exactly.
So 50,000 volunteers is it's a pretty good shot. And I know it's going up against a lot, which we'll talk about in a second.
A lot of folks did not think that he had a shot. And I think you're seeing just in the past week with this poll that we're going to show, it's definitely possible. And some of that comes down to New York's exciting, new, confusing ranked choice system.
Right. So this is the Emerson poll that has him after 7 rounds. There could be a flip, which, given how many candidates there are, what is it Are there
11, I think.
11? Yeah, that it could actually go to your 7th choice, or like, your 5th choice, right? If you can rank 5. And so this shows, Mamdani squeaking out in the last round.
Yeah, and so that's why I think even if you maybe haven't heard of Zoran Mamdani, you may have heard people say don't rank Cuomo. And that's because New Yorkers have 5 choices when they're filling out their ballot of those 11 candidates. So basically, the idea is if someone's going into the voting booth and they're, just choosing willy-nilly, or they're choosing based on name recognition, they might, or even if they're not a fan of Cuomo, they might put him on the 5th slot.
Sure.
If you don't put Mamdani, that's effectively a vote for Cuomo. If you want to vote for, if you don't want to vote for Cuomo, then I didn't explain that well, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah. That like that's sort of the strategy we've talked about before. WFP, saying don't rank Cuomo, and that's like the dream. Don't rank evil Andrew Cuomo or evil Andrew for mayor, however they spelled it. And I'm like really dubious, because the ranked choice voting is. I think it favors, number one, it favors democracy, period. It favors also a more positive campaign, that you can actually campaign with people and not take away from their shine, from their votes. You can campaign together. My question is, again, out of 11 candidates, even having WFP on, what was it, like a couple months ago, they were still like, oh, we're endorsing 5 people or 4 people. And it was like, I don't know, man, maybe just endorse 2. And so that was, you and I were talking about like, yeah, okay. But we will see how that strategy played out, because I know, for example, Brad Lander co-endorsed Zoran. I know that Michael Blake also, they had a cross endorsement. He's also running and really handed Cuomo his ass in one of those first debates, saying, like the only like women in this country, women in this city should fear Andrew Cuomo. It was a brilliant moment. But like, that's my worry, is that maybe they haven't campaigned together hard enough to really push Cuomo out. And we'll talk about the different, possibilities of how, what could happen in this outcome. Because it almost feels like this war in Iran. You're like, well, there's actually a billion things that could happen even after today. But just to clarify it, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, definitely the one question will be, are people understanding ranked choice enough? Did people campaign together enough? But I think, for what it's worth, like on the progressive side, people definitely have to, and I think are giving Brad Lander his flowers, because as someone who, I worked on the Bernie campaign in 2020, and it was also a very, very crowded race in Iowa, and we saw that also when Trump was elected. That was also a very, very crowded race for the first time, and I'm thinking about that. The crowded field sometimes a lot more than I'm thinking about ranked choice voting, and how this sort of information overload, which also happens in social media, sort of can, muddy the waters in terms of just voter misinformation, voters' ability to understand what's going on in this race. I think that there definitely is a lot of negative information going on around ranked choice voting. I definitely think if Zoran Mamdani wins, there will be a campaign to get rid of ranked choice voting.
Oh, yes.
Which New Yorkers, democratically made happen.
Yes.
So,
because if you had this is the reality, is if it would be no contest, right? If there weren't ranked choice voting, Cuomo, simply by name recognition, would likely get the majority. And you don't need over 50%. You just need the majority. He could win with 12% of the vote. And then everyone else would be accused of splitting the vote. And sort of to your point, I've seen people say, oh, imagine if Elizabeth Warren had, endorsed Bernie Sanders and they ran together. And I do think that's actually, it's not a perfect analogy, because we didn't have ranked choice voting and we don't have ranked choice voting in the Democratic primary. We should, and I do think it's something to fight for.
In the caucus, you do realign, which is
totally. Yes, exactly. And even if you don't realign, like Bernie and Warren should have stuck it out to butt everyone else, all the fucking centrists, out of the race. You know what I mean? That should have been sort of, what I'm trying to say is, even if it is winner take all, I think running as if it is a ranked choice voting system, and really directly in the caucuses, it kind of is. I was there in Nevada, and man, yeah, the reorganization was, and caucuses are wild to watch. But at least we can say, like, I love the, like, RCV, at least it's not a caucus. But
that should be their tagline for sure.
That should really be their tagline. Well, let's talk about like Cuomo's funding. Okay. Cuomo, if y'all don't know, like, if you haven't been paying attention, truly the billionaires and most mainstream media has come out completely coalescing against for Cuomo. You got Jim Clyburn, again, guy who first endorsed Biden in that pivotal 2020 race, endorsing Cuomo. Bill Clinton, because, predator recognized predator, endorsed Cuomo. Just like, how aren't you ashamed? Like, even if you're Hillary, like, just divorce him now. I don't even, like, what are you, 75, girl? Just leave, but like, whatever, just to say, like, the Clintons are not a good brand. Real estate tycoons, they're a massive super PAC that I think Akilah Lacey was saying has 26, what is this? It was like $26 million or something like that from this Fix the City PAC. DoorDash, for some reason, is investing heavily. Yes, here's the pie chart breakdown. Sadly, some unions are throwing down with Cuomo. Now, the ride delivery thing I think is really interesting, Paige. And can you just explain why DoorDash would want to throw down with Cuomo and against a plan that was like, for affordability?
Yeah. I definitely am not an expert about the political powers of the service or servant apps, as some call them, but
servant apps.
But yeah, I mean, they have a lot of money. We saw that in California with Proposition there, with Uber, and Los Deliveristas here in New York City are very strong, and Mamdani has a history of fighting for workers, like with taxi drivers here in New York City. So I imagine that they definitely saw their chance to align with Cuomo and
it's all to exploit labor. I mean, that's I'm no expert either, but I think it's very clear. You want to throw down with the mayor who's going to allow you to keep exploiting a massive workforce. Let's be real, often immigrant workforce, underpay them, and not have to, like, just like Uber and Lyft or whatever, like, use all the public sidewalks, stop in the middle of the street, take up a bunch of space, underpay people, never make people full-time employees, and get a tax break for doing so. Like, this is because you think about DoorDash is squarely against, New York City is run on restaurants. It's just nothing but restaurants, right? It's food everywhere. And restaurants pay a ton, because instead of DoorDash and delivery services have subsumed their own delivery services, they pay a fee. So it's like all of that. It's like, who's looking out for mom and pop shops, which still exist in New York City, unlike many other cities, versus someone who's looking out for, like, those, skimming off the top, like DoorDash.
Yeah. One last random thing to say on that is New York also, which this doesn't really play into the mayor's race, but I think it's an interesting thing that people should be following, is that New York recently, I would say, criminalized biking in the city. So you used to be able to, when you got a bike ticket, either get a civil summons or a criminal summons. And now, basically, if you get a bike ticket in the city for running a red light, for doing any kind of traffic violation, you get a criminal summons. Now, let's think about that for a moment. Who could that possibly be targeting? Is it the guy with the $600 Trek bike? Is it the guy, fully kitted up? No, it's the person who does that for their job. And It's a way to get people on ICE's radar.
Jesus, yeah. That's so terrifying.
Yeah. So that's like the type of stuff that's going on here, that I know a little bit more about delivery systems.
Oh, I love it. I love that random intel, but it's good. And I want to play this because Someone bitched about it a little bit earlier, which is Benjamin saying Colbert's racist bullshit with Zoran. And look, Zoran is Muslim. His dad, this is really interesting, Paige. When I was 23, in 2003, I was a little bit younger, but Good Muslim, but Bad Muslim was the book, his dad's book that came out right when we were invading Afghanistan and Iraq. And the book is basically all about how we make every Muslim swear that they're not one of the bad ones. And usually the bad ones, obviously there's you have to condemn all terrorism, you have to condemn anti-Semitism, but also if you're religious, you're a bad Muslim. If you're totally you don't go, to mosque or anything, you're a good Muslim. If you're a super westernized or whatever. And that was his basic premise and argument. And now his son is running and is a front runner, and it's so powerful and wonderful, but there's also this rabid Islamophobia that we are reminded of, right? Mamdani is facing down mailers again from those billionaire investors, who are supporting Cuomo, that all obviously target his line, globalize the Intifada, or his defense of the phrase globalize the Intifada, which, by the way, everyone must know this, and people who do know it already. But I used to write I helped organize a lefty paper called Left Turn, progressive paper. And our slogan was the notes from the global intifada. Left turn, notes from the global intifada. What does global intifada mean? It's a global revolution. It's rising up against the oppressors, rising up against global capitalism. Intifada literally means to shake off. It is a cry for action. It is not violent. But it's just so funny that that's, all these years later, it's being now popularized. And anyway, so there's all these all these crazy things, like people getting text messages and these mailers that have Hebrew on them that says, "Don't stand idly by while your neighbor's blood is shed." Again, very much about the fact that he is Muslim. And then this is a long clip, but I want to play it because he was on, Zoran and Brad Lander were on Colbert, which is awesome and a coup in and of itself. But Colbert asks him this really messed up line of questioning, as Ben pointed out, and it was honestly truly disturbing to watch. But Zoran is so masterful, and I don't even know how he does it. He just completely, without selling out his values, his ideals, is really able to take control of this.
The state of Israel have the right to exist.
Yes, like all nations, I believe it has a right to exist and a responsibility also to uphold international law.
Okay, well, let's.
So first of all, does it have the right to exist? Buddy, you're on the eve of the New York City election asking about the state of Israel having a right to exist. And then he just Zoran, yes, under international law, and that abides by international law, which again is he's not going to tell you the empty platitude without saying, kind of, nodding to the fact that Israel's absolutely out of line right now. They're fucking buck wild. And then Colbert's okay, let's get to the real issue. You're one of the Muslims or whatever. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about the elephant in the room, is that there are many people in New York, even people who would support your candidacy otherwise, who don't want to support you because of the Jewish community's fear of the true and rising anti-Semitism, not only around the world, but in this country and shamefully in New York, which is the largest Jewish population of any city other than Tel Aviv in the whole world. And they are worried, they're very upset by some of the things that you've said in the past, and they're afraid that your mayorship would actually lead to increased anti-Semitism.
Why? 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 Just question. Anyway, I can't believe he even landed that question, but we'll listen to his answer.
They believe that would be more dangerous for them. What do you say to those New Yorkers who are afraid that you wouldn't be their mayor, that you wouldn't protect them?
I know where that fear is coming from. It's a fear that is based upon the horrific attacks we've seen in Washington, D.C., in Boulder, Colorado. It's
all the way from Jews will not replace us to today.
And it's a fear that I hear also from New Yorkers themselves.
Okay, sorry, Colbert, I just have to stop it there because all the way from Jews will not replace us today, again, conflating anyone who is anti-genocide, who protests in solidarity with Palestinians, and Nazis and Nazis. Like, oh God, anyway, let him finish, Stephen.
Just a few days after the horrific war crime of October 7th, a friend of mine told me about how he went to his synagogue for Shabbat services, and he heard the door open behind him, and a tremor went up his spine as he turned around, not knowing who was there and what they meant for him. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg just months ago who told me that the door he left unlocked for decades is now one that he locks. And ultimately, this is because we're seeing a crisis of anti-Semitism. And that's why at the heart of my proposal for a Department of Community Safety is a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. Because
anti-hate crime programming by 800%. And notice he made it universal. I think he could have even just said, also, there's a rise in Islamophobic attacks. But yes, he made it universal, talking about program, which I think is great.
To your point, anti-Semitism is not simply something that we should talk about. It's something that we have to tackle. We have to make clear there's no room for it in this city, in this country, in this world. And
no justification for violence of any kind?
No, there's no...
Like, what are you doing, Stephen? No justification for violence of any kind?
Are you sure?
Okay. Yeah, do you condemn Hamas? Is that the time? Okay, so you, and that's not just because of the beard thing and the fact that you pray and to Mecca. Like,
I
like
saw this
what?
photo
Like,
of
it's
you,
so
and you
bad.
You looked very Muslim. Are you
Yeah. There was a really Muslim-y photo of you. That's not you, right? Like, just come on.
Room for violence in this city, in this country, in this world. And what I have found also from many New Yorkers is an ability to navigate disagreement. You know, I remember the words of Mayor Koch, who said, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I had an older Jewish woman come up to me at B'nai Jeshurun in a synagogue many months ago after a Democratic Club forum. And she whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is. And I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you on my ballot. And I say this because I know there are many New Yorkers with whom I have a disagreement about the Israeli government's policies. And also, there are many who understand that that's a disagreement still rooted in shared humanity. Because the conclusions I've come to, they are the conclusions of Israeli historians like Andrew Cuomo. They are echoing the words of an Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, who said just recently, what we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is cruel, it is indiscriminate, it is limitless, it is criminal killing of civilians. These are the conclusions I've come to. Stephen?
Just so masterful. Like, he wasn't, at no point does he sell out, at no point does he like sugarcoat it, but it just, again, with that, like, that smile, that, like, that personability. And it's also a page, like, he's like, yeah, if you disagree with me on Israel, that's okay. I'm not the mayor of Tel Aviv. Like,
yeah. And you saw that so beautifully on the debate stage when I'm pretty sure every single other candidate, they asked the candidates, what would be the first country you would go to if you took the office of mayor? And God. They said, our favorite land, the Holy Land. Why do you say? I'm pretty sure every single, I think one person said Jamaica, but everyone else on stage said Israel. And they got to
now, like, even if you did, even if you were like a total Zionist, I'm like, now? Not that, I mean, have you read the news? Like,
and they got to Zoran, and he said something to the effect of, I am running to be the mayor of New York City, and I will stay in New York City because that's where I'm going to be the mayor.
Or he could just be like, hey, do you know Queens is the most diverse place on planet Earth? It's got people from literally every...
Republic of Astoria? Yeah.
Yes, the Republic of Astoria. There are people from every single, country on this planet. That's Queens. Yeah, man. The instructor's pointing out how many people are going to vote for Andrew Cuomo when he lied about the COVID nursing home deaths during COVID. Or do people just forget? I mean, this is what's wild is that if any of these candidates had the track record that Cuomo did, plus the money behind them, you would never stop seeing billboards, ads, and signs, the most expensive, mailers, about the real damage, the devastation. I mean, Cuomo should not be allowed anywhere near office. Somehow, if you excuse his treatment of 11 women who've accused him of sexual misconduct, like his treatment of the elderly, So 12, right? Or like, and
13,
also not 13, great. And not only that, Paige, but like something, you know, that is also important to know is like how much Cuomo makes deals with Republicans to over progressives and any real progress. And that's what he did as governor in the state assembly. And he threw Democrats under the bus so that even Cuomo's the reason that Democrats in New York suck so much. I mean, like are, you know, where they are. Not all, but you know.
Yeah, as you were saying, just right there, like, you know, people love to say this, but it's really the organized money versus organized power. So we have something called matching funds here in New York, which is supposed to benefit small donors. So Zoran was able to raise $8 million through matching funds, got thousands and thousands of donations, and with an average donation of about $80. And then Michael Bloomberg just last week was able to donate that same amount of money in one go.
To Cuomo. Like Bloomberg. Oh, yeah. Like, aren't you all about like a green city? Like, this is where it really, Bloomberg is really, like, obviously he's a fucking billionaire. I don't give a shit. I don't expect more from him. But it's like, that is really how you know when like Bloomberg, Mr., you know, I want to invest in, you know, real climate solutions, probably for a tax write-off. Like rubber hits the road on you throwing fucking $80 million behind, or what was it? However many millions of dollars. $8 million behind Cuomo in one fell swoop. Why? Because you're worried about your investments, dog? Like, what are you doing? And so that's a real thing. I want to play this before we get out of here because number one, you pulled it and you did the work, but it's also a great, you know, Dan Pfeiffer from PodSave. Look, I don't watch or listen to PodSave, but sometimes people retweet them and they make sense. I think even the PodSave bros are being radicalized by this moment. This is what Dan Pfeiffer is saying about that establishment in the Democratic Party working really tirelessly against Mamdani.
You have to admit that what Mamdani has done is to build a very inspiring campaign that has energized young people for a mayoral race in a way in which no one has seen in a very long time. While that's happening, you have seen this panic among the Democratic establishment, not just in New York, but outside of New York. You have all these centrist Democrats saying, you know, this is going to cost us races and we can't have a Democratic socialist. And once again, the Democratic establishment is circling the wagons. They have a super PAC funded by billionaires running just nonstop negative ads against Mamdani. You know, we're all having this conversation, like, how do we get young people to stick with Democrats? How do we win them back? And then every single time there's a candidate they get excited about, some members of the Democratic establishment and billionaires get together to try to torpedo that candidacy. To do that is bad. To do it for Andrew Cuomo is really unforgivable. You're doing it for someone that the entire Democratic Party leadership, including the President of the United States at the time, wanted to resign from the governorship because he sexually harassed 11 women. He abused his power, involved in this nursing home scandal, and everyone's getting behind that. The idea that we are more scared about a Democratic socialist as the mayor of New York than Andrew Cuomo with his record of corruption and sexual harassment is insane to me.
Yes, it is insane. I mean, if it let this moment radicalize you, I mean, we will see what happens obviously later tonight. Paige, give us a sense. I mean, we know, clarify this, right? First ranked positions will be tabulated tonight.
We will know something. Maybe we could know something.
I love this.
We will not. It took 15 days in 2021 for us to know.
To get to fucking Eric Adams.
Eric Adams, who won by a really, really small amount in that like same like fifth realignment type
Yes.
deal.
Yes.
And, you know, I would just guess that no matter what happens, it's going to be something really similar to that. It's really going to come down to those, you know, how did Brad Lander supporters rank Cuomo versus Mamdani? How did, you know, our Scott Stringer heads, how did they rank, you know?
Brad Lander fans better not be ranking Cuomo. That would be a bullshit.
I mean,
I gotta see some of these ballots. Someone's got to be honest about their ranks.
I want to find all the rare ballots. Not enough people wanted to talk to me this morning at 8 a.m. But I was like, I want to find all these random. What I did find was like someone who told me that they ranked Mamdani and Cuomo and wouldn't tell me.
Yeah.
And those are the only two who they ranked, and they wouldn't tell me who they ranked first.
Right.
Like,
well, because
great.
that's the other thing is like Mamdani and Cuomo are probably people they've heard of if they've, because it is about name recognition. But you're right. It's like, all right, the order really matters then. And I think everyone's talking about, it seems like, look, if somehow Zoran pulls this out, amazing, and wins the Democratic primary, amazing. It seems like Cuomo's going to try to run in the general, just like, Eric Adams is running as an independent in the general. Cuomo's going to run in the general.
And anti-Semitism line, most likely. Lest we
forget. Is that a real line?
Yes. It's currently being litigated of like if he runs on that line or another line, and he can't actually run on two lines. But yeah, he's running on Eric Adams running on the end anti-Semitism line.
Oh, Eric Adams is. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Fully funded by, how many of these are funded by different like Israeli lobbyist groups?
And I swear, this may be a fever dream of mine. Don't fact check me. But I feel like, at least in my fever dream, Andrew Cuomo is running on some kind of like something that might have to do with women. I'm not kidding.
Well, he did create the separate, I'm forgetting what the party name is, but like the Women's Freedom Party effectively to run to boot out Working Families Party. I'm forgetting that exact history, but he did that before.
Yeah. So basically, the thing is, we're not going to know much at all Tuesday night. We probably won't know a whole lot a week from then. Mm-hmm. And even then, even in a world where Zoran Mamdani wins the election, he will most likely face a four-way race in November. And if Cuomo wins the election, then Zoran Mamdani can run on the WFP line if he chooses to, or Bradley could do so.
Right. And if they, exactly. So that could be another pathway forward. It's not over. Even if Cuomo clinches the Democratic primary, I think either way, the organizing grassroots campaign that has been built around Mamdani, just the way he's like taken social media and, done every podcast, including this one, it really is a model. And it's using both volunteers and social media to his advantage, because we know that the money's going to buy the ad spots, the money's going to buy the radio spots, the money's going to buy the mailers. And I'm not saying, I know he's got a massive, strategy on that, but it's just, you can't, the money is going to be what goes the long way, and all the negative ads and shit like that.
That's the one last thing I wanted to make sure to say, as the pod save person was kind of talking about, is, Democrats are spinning out. They're having an existential moment about what the future is of their party, and especially about how to reach young people and how to reach young men. And if that is the question on their mind, I would say, wake up and look at New York City. That is, you see people, on Twitter complaining about all the young gentrifiers in Crown Heights, yelling at them, telling them to vote for, it's the Bernie bro discourse all over again. But it's like, if you want, young men to be involved in the Democratic Party, you need to look at this young man.
Look at these rising stars. Yeah. Look at this fucking rising star. But no, it had to be Eric Adams. He's the rising star. No, man, he's a corrupt.
Come on.
Yeah, exactly. He's a corrupt former, police chief. Nobody wants that. People like Zoran. People like what he stands for. And also,
Eric Adams, unfortunately, has been the future of the Democratic Party. So,
Exactly. I think it's hugely consequential, not just for New York, but the entire country and the entire sort of political alignment. I think if, the establishment successfully boots him out, there's going to be a real come to Jesus moment. Either way, for many, for even like people like these pod save guys, and of like, look, this party is the party of billionaires, and it really isn't left right. It's just kind of like who's going to protect money and who's going to be, threaten it. And Zoran is seen as a threat. And the other thing I know about him, if he doesn't win, Paige, look, you've met the guy, we've met the guy. Like, he's got such a future. This guy has so far to go. I mean, if it's not going to be mayor, it'll be Congress. If it's not Congress, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's going places, and that much is clear. What's going on, Frantifa? If you haven't already, subscribe to this channel right now. Hit that button. And also, you can become a patron and support the show every single week. Get access to bonus episodes and exclusive merchandise. Patreon.com/Bitchuation Room. Do it.